Hello and welcome to Moving Shadows Goth Around the World stream. I am DJ Kelly A, and this is my co-hostess, Cadaver Kelly.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So we are both based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Two goth Kellys from Pittsburgh, as we have to explain to people frequently.
Yes.
And we're going to be telling you about the history of goth music around the world. And we work together on a playlist, and I think Cadaver Kelly has a little more of the history to tell you than I do, but we both have some interesting things to share. Would you like to take it away, Cadaver Kelly?
Sure. And I know that we have some international viewers that were interested in this event, so maybe we'll have some other insights in the chat. So anyone who's watching from their Twitch account will be in the chat throughout the stream as well, and maybe we can have some further discussion in there. So Kelly, are we going to start off with the UK?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Great place to start because the UK is the birthplace of punk and goth. Goth branched out of punk. So there's a lot of different pockets of underground music and dark music that was happening in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s. One of the big ones was in Manchester. It was the advent of post-punk and new wave, and that came from Factory Records. Joy Division came out of that. And if anyone's interested in learning more about this region and how that music scene evolved, I would recommend the book 24-Hour Party People by Tony Wilson, or the 24-Hour Party People film, really great film. Peter Hook of Joy Division and New Order also wrote a few books, including Unknown Pleasures, and a book about the Hacienda, which was the Factory Records nightclub, and that was the center of the Manchester scene for a long time. And there's some debate on Goth's exact beginnings in the scene. Some people would lump Joy Division into that. But a lot of people consider Bauhaus to be the first Goth band, and they originated from Northampton in England. So they were not a part of that Manchester movement necessarily, but they really kicked off the goth and dark post-punk movement when they released Bela Lugosi's Dead in 1979. And of course, a lot of the really iconic second wave goth rock bands hail from Leeds in England. And that was the origin of the modern goth rock sound with bands like the Sisters of Mercy, The Mission, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, and the March Violets. So Kelly, any commentary from you? I know you wanted to maybe mention Whitby Goth Weekend.
Well, I did want to mention the March Violets. We'll be playing them a little bit later. They made a little bit of a comeback in 2014 and did a tour of the U.S., and I actually booked them on that tour to play at Cadaver, which was a very cool show. And then I think that might be the last from them because their singer, Cy, got sick after that. But I'm really glad that I got to see that. As you mentioned, there are some important festivals that happen in England. The Whitby Goth Weekend. I've always wanted to go. I have not actually ever been to England. I've only been to Germany.
I've never been either. I've never been outside of North America, but I am going to London in March. I'm going to see Adam and the Ants.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Just Adam Ant. Adam Ant's doing a UK tour, so I'm going to fly to London in March and go see Adam Ant.
Now, are you going to be one of those people that wears the pirate shirt to the concert, or are you going to dress more your
I'm
own?
very seriously considering it. I'm very seriously considering like stand and deliver music video era Adam Ant, but probably not. We'll see how brave I'm feeling.
I have a friend, a female friend, who dressed up basically like Adam Ant for a concert. It's probably 10 years ago, but she got a selfie with him, with them dressed similarly. So that would be cute.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to find it.
I've seen more than one Adam Ant costume contest events, and that's fun, where people go as various eras of Adam Ant. So basically, everyone's just going there dressed like pirates.
Yeah, pretty much. So, why don't you tell us about the first song that you have for us?
Sure. So for the UK, I did select two songs that were released this year, brand new releases. The first one is a band from England. They are called Senex 4, and the track is called Brother Grimm.
All right, let's give it a listen. Okay, that was Senex 4. That's how you say it, right?
Senex 4, yeah.
Senex 4, and they are from Suffolk, according to my notes. I actually have the next song. I'm going to play something by the March Violets. So they did actually record together in 2014 when they were doing their comeback tour. And this is my favorite song from that album. It's called Made Glorious. That was the March Violets with Made Glorious. And Cadaver, Kelly, you wanted to talk a little bit about Mark E. Moon next, I see.
Yes. So the next track, similarly to the first track, also a new release from 2021. I tried to sprinkle in a lot of new releases in the mix. Mark E. Moon are from Isle of Man, and this track is called Animals.
Mark E. Moon and Animals. That was a very cool song. I think this is the only band I know who are from the Isle of Man.
Yeah, I think there's one more, and now I can't remember what band it was. There's definitely at least one more that's been releasing recent goth music.
Who would have thought? So I want to move us to Ireland. I ordered this Gothic globe, which I love, but it's only 5 inches tall, so it makes it a little hard to show you. I would have to.
It is very cute, though.
I would have to position for a while, but So we're spinning the globe very slightly to go to Ireland now and talk about Virgin Prunes, who I think are the
Yes.
oldest band on this list because they were formed in 1977. And Bauhaus wasn't until 1979, right? Or was that just when Bela Lugosi's Dead came out? Do you know that year?
That was their first release, was Bela Lugosi's Dead. I think Bela Lugosi's Dead as a single was Bauhaus's first release. Now, whether they were like playing venues and stuff before that, I'm not sure.
Right. So
I would assume so.
I think Virgin Prunes are slightly older. So they formed in Dublin in 1977. And I didn't know this until I was researching for this, but they were childhood friends of Bono from U2.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Their singer.
Interesting trivia.
Yeah. Their singer was Gavin Friday. They disbanded in 1986 after he left the band, and then he went on to have a great solo career. He has got some solo singles that I really enjoy. One of their biggest hits is Pagan Love Song. I'm very partial to Baby Turns Blue. So let's hear some of that. Virgin Prunes from Dublin, Ireland, and Baby Turns Blue. I have the next song too, which is the Twilight Side, who are from Scotland and from a tiny town, I believe, Kilsyth. It's kind of near Glasgow. And so I heard of this band because they toured with The Cure 8 years ago, something like that. And they just have this just wonderful, lush post-punk sound, but maybe it has a touch of dark wave. Kelly, you're the genre expert, so you can tell me what you think after we hear it.
Okay, sounds good. It sounds right up my alley,
Yeah.
so I'm excited.
Oh, you've not heard them before?
No.
Oh,
I haven't.
yeah, you're in for a treat. This is from 2018, and it's the Twilight Side with VTR.
I've been waiting for you. There's nothing that I'd rather do.
That was the Twilight Side. What did you think, Kelly?
I loved it. I would place it probably somewhere on the border of dark wave and synth pop because the synth pop elements were very strong in that one. But it did have that kind of post punk guitar, like that jangly guitar work in there. But the synth took center stage. They almost remind me a little bit of Crew Lies, or even closer on the synth pop side, bands like Corinne. Uh, it had a little brighter of a sound to it than some of the like more gothy dark wave. But yeah, it's somewhere in that wave spectrum, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have pegged the synth pop, but now that you say it, I hear it. I mean, I tend to lean a little synthier. As you know, I'm a dark wave specialist, and you tend to like stuff with a little more guitar than I do. So I start to take the synth for granted that it's going to be there, you know, in most
Oh
of the
yeah,
songs that I find.
beautiful synth work in that track.
Definitely. So I have another song from Scotland. There's a lot of really good Scottish music coming out. Oh, I wanted to say I could hear their accent in that song, and that was something that I like. There's a part where they're kind of talking a little bit, and I could hear the Scottish accent peeking through, which you
Yes.
don't always hear. So many people sing in English now, and it doesn't sound like they have an accent to me, but occasionally when I hear it peeking through, I do enjoy that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very cool.
oh, we were talking earlier about how in the 80s you would get sort of a regional sound. Like we have all those Leeds bands
Yes.
like Sisters and Mission, which we didn't play songs from them tonight because we kind of figured our audience is very familiar with, you know, the
Yeah.
Sisters and the
They've
Mission.
heard it a million times
Right.
before.
We're focusing more on newer stuff here. But a lot of those bands kind of had a similar sound because they were going to the same, playing at the same clubs and hearing each other a lot. And now
Right.
that we have things like Spotify, we're getting people from around the world that are being influenced by each other. So it's like they're influenced by a genre and not as much of a region, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's very cool that it's so global now. It's almost like there, borders and location and boundaries don't matter. We definitely saw that a lot in 2020 with everything being online with the live streams and everything. The community is just so connected globally now, and it's really beautiful to see that.
It really is. So I had another
The
band.
regional sounds.
Yeah. So there's another band that I wanted to play from Scotland that really sound nothing like Twilight Sad to me. I mean, they do have a little bit of that synth, but they don't have guitars or that same guitar sound. And I'm really loving them right now. They are called Witch of the Vale, and the song is Commemorate.
A feeling I cannot escape.
Had you heard that one before, Kelly?
I have not.
Where would you place that on the genre spectrum?
Somewhere definitely in the electronic side. Almost had with some of the effects in there, leaning more into the industrial territory. Not quite industrial because it didn't have that like the choppiness, the chopping things up and piecing things together. But somewhere close to that. So somewhere in the dark electronic family, I think.
Yeah, that one's a little heavier than some of their songs. Some of their songs tend to be fairly quiet, but they get remixed a lot. There's a couple. I think they have. Well, no, there's a remix of this song by Grendel that I love, and then they have a song called "Trust the Pain" that was remixed by Leatherstrip that I really enjoy too. So like, she's just got one of those voices that work really well for remixing.
Yeah, that song was beautiful. I loved it.
You should also hear her cover of Lana Del Rey's "Gods and Monsters." It's like very haunting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Um, so we've got in the chat, I see Junkyard Bat is talking to us. Hello. And she's talking about how so many clubs only play electronic music, which, I mean, it makes sense to me to an extent because, like, you want a beat that you can dance to. But, I mean, I think there's atmospheric dancing too. And I definitely like when clubs mix it up. I always try to do that. And when I've helped run nights that have multiple DJs, I always try to pair like an industrial DJ with a goth DJ or a dark wave DJ, so we really get that sound mixed up. Because yeah, who wants to hear the same exact beat all night everywhere you go in a city, right?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, I'm more, as you said, on the like rock, post-punk, punk side of things. Junkyard Bat's actually my buddy Jason down in
Oh,
Jacksonville,
I'm
and
sorry, I
but
confused him with a different friend of yours, so
oh yeah, yeah.
sorry for
Junkyard
misgendering
Bat.
there.
But Jason Junkyard Bat makes fantastic jewelry. Made my necklace that I'm wearing tonight.
Ooh.
Uh, but I definitely agree with that. That there's a lot of electronic, and that is something I think we're going to talk about a little bit more when we get to the Americas. Is kind of like industrial and electronic in the American club scene.
All right. Well, we are ready to spin the globe now, slightly, to do Western Europe. And do you want to talk about the Spanish post-punk movement, Kelly?
Absolutely. So, as we mentioned, there was a lot of different regional sounds in the early movement of goth and post punk and all these different genres. And one of the regional styles in Western Europe at the time was early Spanish post punk, which drew heavily from its punk roots. So it's right up my alley. It was a lot closer to punk, not that far off from death rock. There were bands like Paralysis Permanente and really awesome movements. There's so much great Spanish post punk, and that was big when I was kind of coming of age in the 2000s too. There were bands like Los Carniceros del Norte, great Spanish death rock band. But there were other very regional movements happening in Western Europe in the early days. There was the French cold wave trend in the 80s, and that was the minimal machine like spin on post punk. And you can't talk about Western European goth without mentioning the country that's become the global capital of goth in modern day, and that's Germany. The German goth scenesters call themselves Grufties, I believe. There's a Cemetery Confessions episode that recently came out on that with DJ Cyberpagan. So I'm going to drop the link to that episode in the chat. Really interesting info on the German goth scene. Of course, got to give a shout out to Vave Gothic Treffen, right?
Of course. If I could cut in there just briefly, I first heard the term grufties probably in the late 90s, and it's because I mentioned the only country outside of the US that I've been to, other than a brief trip over the border to Vancouver when I lived in Washington State is Germany. I was an exchange student there um, for a summer in 1991. And it was a program where I stayed with a German guy's family, and then he stayed with my family. We traded off, and we went to each other's high school.
Very cool.
And he was a singer of a punk band, and then his friend was really into goth, and so he sent me a cassette of German goth, and then he told me that they were called grufties. So that was the first time that I heard that, and I probably have
That's
that
an
cassette
amazing
somewhere.
story.
I have a bag of cassettes somewhere in my basement. I should see if that's there and see what 90s goth from Germany he was sending me.
That would be really cool to hear. And I'm sure everyone in the chat is well aware, but Viv Gotik Treffen is in Leipzig, Germany. It's the world's largest goth and dark alternative music festival, where goths basically take over an entire city in Germany for a few days. And I really want to go someday. It's on my bucket list. I'm saving up for it. One of these years, I'll make it out to Vigete.
Yeah, I've heard that the whole town of Leipzig really caters to the goths, and like the restaurants will have specials, and like they really get into it and really welcome everybody, and make some of their fair amount of tourist income off of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a huge revenue driver for the city. So that's really cool. I'm sure it's amazing to see it in person. So that's definitely a bucket list item.
Maybe we'll
So
go.
yeah, yeah, maybe. So we ready to play some music? Who's up first?
The next track I have of yours is Order 89.
Oh, so this one is also a new release from this year. And Order 89 are a band from France. This track, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, which is terrible because I do speak a little bit of French, but I think it's called Rondes.
Sounds good to me. I never took French, just Spanish and German. Here we go. was Order 89 with Ronde, we think. And your next song, Kelly, is by Grey Gallows.
Yes, another new release for this year, 2021. Grey Gallows is from Greece, and this track is called Garden of Lies.
Up next, we have Italy. I have a song by the band Ash Code, who I believe are one of your favorites, right, Kelly?
I do like Ash Code, yes.
They're a darkwave band. They formed in Napoli, Italy in 2014, and they are a trio. I think the singer and the bass player are brothers. They have the same last name, and then the keyboardist is Claudia, and they have a new one out. The song is called Fear. This is Ash Code. Representing Italy, that was Ash Code with their new track Fear. And it's time. I know you're excited. It's time to talk about Clan of Zymox. Go.
Yes. So Clan of Zymox is one of the original darkwave bands. They started out in the 80s. I actually got to see Clan of Zymox live in 2019. I believe it was November 2019. I went to Akron, Ohio. Bellwether Syndicate was opening up for them. It was a fantastic show.
And I was supposed to go with you, but I got violently ill.
Yeah, you were supposed to go with me. Oh, yeah.
I got food poisoning, and I had to call you like 4 hours before. I can't go.
Oh, that's such a bummer.
But I did.
They're touring again.
They are. I did see them in, I believe it was 1999 or 1997, late 90s, at the Brew House on the South Side, which was it was I don't think you might not have heard of that. It was a little before your time, but it was it used to be a place where they brewed beer, and they turned it into artist apartments. And they had a big common room where there were concerts sometimes, and Manny brought them. In fact, I think.
Of course. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Manny actually came with me to that show.
What's that? Yes, that's right. He did.
With me
yeah.
To that show. Yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to be the fourth person in the car. And in fact, I think I was offered to book that show in the 90s, and it was a little too expensive for my 22-year-old self to handle, but Manny Thiner, Pittsburgh's
he had those big
indie
dollars.
promoter. he saved the day and brought them, and that was a good show. But there's no stage there, so it was kind of hard to see. I was peeking over people, but I saw in your YouTube video that you put on your YouTube channel, Cadaver Kelly, that you got some pretty good footage at that show.
Yeah, nice plug. Yeah, I do have a video of that show. So actually, I'll try to dig that up and I'll put it in the chat. Does that mean you have some Clan of Zymox to play for us?
I do. So they had an album come out a year ago, and then they dropped another new album 2 days ago. And it's somewhat pandemic. Pandemic? I think I just coined a new word. It was a pandemic, wasn't it? Damn it. I think this new album is somewhat pandemic inspired because the single I'm going to play for you is called Lockdown. Clan of Zymox with Lockdown from their new album, and they are representing the Netherlands. We are still in Western Europe, and we mentioned Germany a little bit already, but now we've got a couple of German bands to play. I found a new song by Pink Turns Blue, who I know are very influential. I am not actually that familiar with them, and I think, Kelly, you might know a little more. Do you have anything to say about them?
Pink Turns Blue, early, they're more like on the ethereal side, right?
This song sounds pretty post-punk. You'll have to see what you think. I know you're a big fan of our local record label, Play Alone Records. They were trying to bring them here. I think that show was canceled because of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, Pink Turns Blue. Sorry, I'm thinking Black Tape for a Blue Girl.
No, yeah,
Oh
all these colors.
Oh, too many colors, too much blue going on over here. But yeah, no. Pink Turns Blue. So we're talking 80s post-punk.
Yeah.
So even though they were playing like around the time of that second wave stuff. So, but I think they had more of that like first wave sound to them.
Right, yeah. I mean, they're from the 80s, so I was surprised that they've got a new track. I really think it sounds great. I'm guessing you haven't heard it yet. It's called There Must Be So Much More. So let's check that out. All right, here we go. Pink Turns Blue, There Must Be So Much More.
So
recent release from Pink Turns Blue, There Must Be So Much More. They have 2 singles that have come out in 2021. I really dig that. I think that's probably up your alley too, right, Kelly?
Absolutely, yeah. That very post-punk, first wave, 80s sort of sound.
So-
Not Black Tape for a Blue Girl.
No, Black Tape for a Blue Girl are ethereal. As you said, they are on Project Records. I believe
Yeah.
they are running a Kickstarter right now for a new album. So it's
Very
great to
cool.
see people that were around in the 80s that are still making music. I really enjoy
Yeah.
that, you know, and it gives me hope for my future that I'll still be doing cool stuff when I'm in my 60s or 70s.
Yeah, please do. Please keep doing this forever. We need you.
You too. You too. So Pink Turns Blue are representing Germany. They formed in Berlin. A couple other bands I thought about talking about from Germany are Ex Mal Deutschland from the 80s and the Merry Thoughts from the 90s. We don't have time for everyone that I wish we could play though, so I'm sticking more with people who have newer releases. So let's go with Blue Tangle, who have been very prolific, and they released a song during lockdown that I really enjoyed, and the video. So I've been playing GIFs mostly from the music videos from the songs that I'm playing, and theirs I really enjoyed. It's mostly fan made. They had fans send in videos of themselves in lockdown, and I'm gonna have to look up what this title means again. I think it means like the undying or something like that. I'll have to relook up the German translation, but the name of the song is Wir sind unser Blick, and this is Blue Engel.
Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Seit ewiger Zeit waren wir auf der Suche und wussten nicht wonach. Seite stehen. Wir werden uns wiedersehen. Dieses Ende ist nicht für immer. Es wird weitergehen. Nicht in dieser Welt, nicht in dieser Zeit. Doch irgendwann sind wir für immer vereint. Wir werden uns wiedersehen. Dieses Ende ist nicht für immer. Es wird weitergehen. Nicht in dieser Welt, nicht in dieser Zeit. Doch irgendwann sind wir für immer vereint. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir werden uns wiedersehen. Dieses Ende ist nicht für immer. Es wird weitergehen. Nicht in dieser Welt, nicht in dieser Zeit. Doch irgendwann sind wir für immer vereint. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich. Wir sind unsterblich.
The Loose Angle with Wir sind unsterblich, and I was very close. That means we are immortal. And I remember reading the story about it when the song came out about a year ago, and I really liked the message of that. I mean, they have a lot of songs about being vampires, and so the idea of we are immortal, we will overcome this plague. And here's all our fans around the world at home keeping on. Thanks for pasting the video to that in the chat. I appreciate everybody that's chatting and sharing links. I gave myself a lot to do tonight. I put off doing a lot on Twitch because I wanted to have a lot of windows and different things going on, but it takes a little while to get used to all of the button pushing involved. So that closes us out with Germany, and we're going to spin the globe now to go to Scandinavia. So I have a song by Long Night, and much like Blue to Angle, their members have been around for a while and have been in other projects. Their singer is Tommy Olsson, Olsson, and he was in Theater of Tragedy, October Turns Black, and The River Knows, and he heads the band, but the vocalist is the vocalist from Tristania. So we've got some heavy gothic metal stuff going on with this band, but I think they're just their sound is like Sisters inspired goth rock, but like really well done.
Yes. Yeah, very very goth rock. I love Long Night, and this is a great example of just that classic goth rock sound in a modern band.
Absolutely. The song of theirs that I first heard was called East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is just an amazing song. But they have a newer track out that I really like, which came out last year, and it is called TikTok.
Chain reaction.
Long Night and TikTok from Norway, and we are still in Scandinavia. We go now to Denmark, and this is one of at least two bands that I know of from Copenhagen, so they seem to have a pretty nice dark scene. The one that I did not decide to fit in tonight, but that I really like, is called AEX. They have a song called Butterfly and a song called 17 that I have played on the Moving Shadows podcast before, which you can hear on mixcloud.com/DJKellyA. Used to be a monthly thing, and then during the pandemic I started doing monthly Zoom dance parties, and that kind of took up the time for that, but I'm starting to do it a little more. So if you want to hear mixes of songs released in darkwave adjacent genres in the last 4 months and hear me talking about them, kind of like we're doing right now, you can go to mixcloud.com/DJKellyA. But the band from Copenhagen that I do want to play is called The Foreign Resort. And Kelly, I think you should be familiar with them. Our friends, the Bellwether Syndicate, went on tour with them a couple years ago. And so the Bellwether Syndicate is William Faith, who was of Faith in the Muse, and his wife, Scary Lady Sarah, and I think Phil,
who goes by Sarah Rose,
yes,
for her music projects. They go by a few different names. I think they DJ sometimes as the Pirate Twins.
Correct, and they are also on Twitch, so you can. I think they go under. I think it's Scary Lady Sarah. It's just the Twitch channel. So you can catch them often as well. But they are touring, opening for Clan of Zymox, as you said. So you'll get a chance to catch them soon. Unfortunately, that show doesn't look like it's stopping in Pittsburgh, but was that? There's some tour.
All right, Kelly, take two. Let's drive out to Ohio to go see them.
Yeah, hopefully I won't get food poisoning this time. But I don't know if it was that tour or another one that I saw where they're playing in like Lebanon, PA, like somewhere in the middle of the state, or like an hour outside Philly.
It's out by yeah, I saw that as well.
I don't think it was
Clan of where it is.
Yeah, I don't think it was Clan of Zymox. I think it was somebody that we both would want to see. I'll have to remember what that is. But yeah, interesting. A lot of venues didn't make it through the pandemic, and now we're having to see what's left and what we can make do. Some of the venues that did make it are being controlled by Live Nation and pushing out the independent promoters who might book some of the bands that we like. So it's a new world, a new frontier. But I'm glad things are coming back.
Yes, we got to build it back up again.
Exactly. So the song I'm going to play is one of the Foreign Resort's newer singles. It's from 2020, and it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. That was the Foreign Resort and Down the Rabbit Hole. I have one more band to play before we leave Scandinavia, and Cadaver Kelly takes us to Eastern Europe. The band that I have to play is called The Mist of Avalon, and they started in the 80s, and I saw that they have a kind of a newer song. This is from 2013, and it's called Helpless.
Helpless little friend, you cry like it all will end. This is not the world you see. Listen to me. Come into this zone where the sunlight makes you warm. This is for the refugees. No need to weep. Kiss and goodnight, and he walks right over with a mission from this earth. We get what we are worth. Gently takes her under his wings, showing her what can be, and still can be. My little friend, just believe. You want it, I'll say I'm there, so out there. You want it, make me your pawn. A million choices in a master plan. What part is it I had again? Show me the way from these mysterious voices. Some kind of sign. Maybe someday I don't need no shelter. Maybe this is our day. Just promise me that you'll take it in. That I walk with you. I can't see me sleep, and then she walks away from this diseased world. She will not stay, and I will never be like the poison in my veins. Beautiful, unbearable, and like a black hole, it fills my mind.
That was The Mist of Avalon from Sweden. And it's time to spin the globe. Kelly's going to take us to Eastern
Yes.
Europe, and we're going to a country so big that I might be able to show it to you on my tiny, tiny
On the little mini globe.
little 5-inch globe. Maybe, I don't know.
So
Maybe not.
I am so excited to talk about Eastern Europe because it's just such a distinct sound. We were talking about the different regional sounds. I mentioned the French cold wave movement when we talked about Western Europe, but Eastern Europe has its own take on cold wave that is really unique. Over there, they use the term cold wave almost like an umbrella to describe a lot of dark underground music, a lot of it being like post-punk and electronic basis. Countries like Poland, Russia, Serbia, Belarus, and Ukraine produce some really great cold, dark, post-punk and electronic. So I have a few tracks to play. Kelly, I think you might have had some as well.
Yes.
I think the first one.
Junkyard Bat guessed it. We are, in fact, going to Russia.
Yes, we are going to Russia. So first up, this is a new release from this year, 2021. This is a Russian cold wave band, Nauchny Satrudnik, and the song is called Bitovoy Invalid.
Я не математик и не журналист, даже не филолог, не баскетболист. Я обычный парень, дую, где болит. Не судите строго, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой я инвалид. Инвалид. Есть роду механик, есть преподаватель, есть даже геолог, но это все не то. С виду я красивый, яркий индивид. В семье моей все в норме, никто не тарактив. Маменька красиво, папенька плечист. Братцы, строй здоровы, в них не жил и глист. А с моим здоровьем тут и там болит. Ладно, притворяюсь, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой, бытовой, бытовой я инвалид. Бытовой я инвалид.
Kelly, do you know how to pronounce that?
It is Bitovoy Invalid is the track, and the band is Nauchny Satrudnik.
All right, and I have on my list that they're from. So, when I was growing up, when I was in elementary school, I learned the USSR. So I'm still having trouble with the individual countries, but I believe they are from actual Russia, right?
Yes, they are from Russia.
Okay, and the city I have for them is Rostov-on-Don, and I don't know where that is, but it's a pretty cool sound.
Yeah.
And from there, we are going to Poland. You've got a song by Mikon for us.
Yep. So the next song, also a new release from 2021 from Mekong. The track is called Black Swan.
body of the leprechaun. He parties so hard like he's 21. He's ready to do it again and again. No matter how hard he dances under the rain, he can't feel any pain. It's just another night and he's looking for fun. There's no stopping him, this is how it's done. He's the favorite son. He's the favorite son. There's no stopping him, living his life on a brim. There's no stopping him, living his life on a brim. His body is dead and gone. Everybody left and he's all alone. He wants to carry on, carry on, carry on. To think this was his only crime. To think he was endless and he had the time to carry on, carry on. He wants to do it once more. One last time before he hits the floor. There's no stopping him, living his life on a brim. There's no stopping him, living his life on a brim. He danced like a black swan. 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 He danced like a black swan.
Very interesting sound there. What can you tell us about that band?
So that track in particular, it's a little more, I wouldn't call it goth if I were to categorize the music. I would call it more on the goth adjacent side, more like a different type of post-punk. It almost had some surf punk kind of sound to it, a little bit of like surf influence in the scales that they use. But this band, like I said, the Eastern European scene, they kind of categorize a bunch of different like dark and alternative music into that cold wave movement. So it's a little different how the scene operates in Eastern Europe versus maybe more of like the like French Italian cold wave bands.
Yeah. Actually, so the Russian song, I mean, that had an interesting sound too. You noted the surf elements in the Mekong song, which I do hear now that you say it. I didn't really hear surf in the Russian song, I don't think, but it did sound more like lo-fi than a lot of what we've been hearing.
Yeah. The Eastern European cold wave stuff, there is a lot more of that lo-fi sound. It has a very unique style to it. But it's a really cool, interesting music movement over there. Over in Eastern Europe, actually, I believe in Poland, there is a goth music festival called Return to the Batcave. So I'd love to check that out one day.
I haven't heard of that one. It sounds intriguing though. And that band is from Krakow, which so I had actually an ex-boyfriend of mine moved to Krakow and he was a music journalist, and so he was writing a lot about the bands there and was getting pretty into them. And now that I say that, there's a band that he sent me from there that I forgot about until just now, and I'm forgetting what their name is. But they had almost a cabaret sound. I'll have to dig them up. But it sounds like they've got a really good music scene in Krakow in general. But so speaking of, you were talking about bands in Eastern Europe having a particular sound and influencing each other. And then earlier we were talking about how bands are also influenced by just bands all over the world. So I have a band from Poland to play as well who they don't have a lo-fi sound at all. They've got I would say it's a dark wave post-punk blend. And I don't know if you've heard them before. They're called Under the Skin.
I heard of them. I don't think I've heard them before,
Okay.
so I'm excited to hear it.
All right, they are from Warsaw, which I'll have to look at a map and see how far apart Warsaw and Krakow are. But that's an example of just their being influenced, I think, by, people from all over the world. So this song, I love it. It's called Burn by Under the Skin. That was Under the Skin with Burn from Warsaw, Poland. Kelly, what are your thoughts on that track?
I loved it. Definitely not that stereotypical Eastern European cold wave sound. That is a lot more along the lines of maybe like a dark wave kind of sound. I really liked it though. And since we're talking about Eastern Europe, I forgot to mention there are two record labels based in Eastern Europe I want to give a shout out to or direct people to. You can look them up on Bandcamp. They have a lot of great bands on the record label, a lot of these like unique cold wave sounding bands, and some of them more just your general dark wave goth rock sounding bands. There's Serpian Records that is based in Russia, and there's Batcave Productions based in Poland. So I'm actually going to find those Bandcamp pages and I'll post them in the chat while the next track is playing.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love Under the Skin. I don't know very much about them. I'm going to have to research them because, yeah, I dig their sound. And I would say to me, they sound like they have that post-punk dark wave blend. And Kelly, didn't you coin a genre name for that?
Not me. The Obscura Undead crew, I believe it was DJ Mouse from Obscura Undead was the one who officially coined it. But she coined the term goth wave, which is a little more of that like gothy post-punk, like mellow gothy post-punk dark wave sound. Yeah, I'll drop the goth wave nomenclature in here and there sometimes. Usually I do have to explain to people more like post-punk based dark wave though. We're trying to make goth wave catch on though. So I
might have to start using it because that is my sweet spot. And of course I love DJ Mouse. Like almost everything that she plays on Communion After Dark are some of my favorite new tracks. So shout out to her and her new dark wave term. So we've got one more in Eastern Europe, and I am ashamed to admit I don't even know this country. Is it one of the ones that used to be part of the USSR? Or?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Belarus. Yeah, so this one would be from 2017. A very popular band right now, Molchat Dama from Belarus, and the track is actually called Dama Molchat.
Okay.
Посмотри туда, где молчат дома.
It is time to spin the globe to our own part of the world. And I think I can actually show it. Yay. Sort of.
Yay.
We now are going to the Americas. Take it away, Kelly.
All right. Lots of ground to cover in the Americas. We're kind of lumping North and South America in here. So the earliest goth movement in the Americas was the death rock music movement, which was very close to its punk roots. It started out in the Los Angeles scene out in California, but over the years it's become very prolific through Latin America. Death rock's one of my favorites. And there's a book that was released about death rock in recent years by Mikey Bean called Phantoms. I'd highly recommend it. It's a collection of like a bunch of different like interviews from different musicians. It's definitely a dense read. It's very all over the place, but a lot of really interesting trivia in that book. So death rock, of course, is that the earliest movement here in the Americas. Here in the U.S., we kind of like mentioned this earlier in the stream, but it's very common for goth to be closely tied to the industrial scene. Goth industrial is a very common combination for our clubs and dance nights. And here in the United States, in the 1990s, Kelly, I think this is something that you could probably talk a little bit about. We had our own sort of like ethereal dark wave movement that happened with bands like Switchblade Symphony, Faith in the Muse.
That is where I came in. Yes. The mid 90s dark wave American scene was my entry point to the goth scene. I actually started out as a college radio DJ, and I was very interested in ethereal, or as they now call it, ethereal wave. I called it ethereal goth. That was my first favorite, and then I started DJing in clubs in the late 90s, and going to clubs. And I worked in a record store, and then there was a used record store next door. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, I worked at Vibes Music, which is owned by National Record Mart, RIP. And upstairs, there used to be an Oakland location of Jerry's Records, and they had a big used CD section. And in 1995, I got 2 albums from their used bin. One was Switchblade Symphony's Serpentine Gallery, and the other was Faith in the Muse, Illyria, their debut album. And it kind of changed my life. It was sort of all over from then on. And there, coincidentally, that's like 2 years later, Club Laga opened up across the street, and it started with a goth night. And it was just sort of all coming together. And that's, and I had friends who had college radio shows, and they were playing the hell out of those albums too, and similar things to that sound. And that's it stole my heart, and here I am 25 years later.
That's amazing. I love hearing stories like that, and that's maybe something we could touch on for the Americas as well as our local scene here in Pittsburgh. In current day, it seems like the post-shutdown Pittsburgh scene is shaping up to be pretty interesting. A lot of our club nights are now at a venue called Belvedere's. I mean, there were events there before, but it seems like a lot of them are now at Belvedere's, which is in Lawrenceville. For those who aren't in Pittsburgh, that's kind of like the trendy area of Pittsburgh right now. And Belvedere's is kind of like a punk goth alternative bar. There's a lot of different like types of dance nights, little music venue, kind of hole in the wall bar, but they have a great dance floor. So we have a monthly night put on by a group called Strange Ways called Technique now. That's a 80s alternative dance night. I know we have a lot of like goth nights coming back. Requiem is back, I believe, and there's a few other nights. Cobwebs. What am I missing, Kelly?
Well, Requiem, Cobwebs, and Haven are all put on by DJ. The DJ formerly
Satyrian?
known, yes, Satyrian is the new name.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it's been so long since I Crash Zero. They're Ash and Brian to me, but DJ Satyrian and Crash Zero are hosting those nights. They were doing them on Twitch through the pandemic. It's interesting, you know, the like you say, the post shutdown landscape is really changing. We had a lot of nights at a lot of different venues, and now a lot of them are sort of consolidating and joining forces and combining, and it's really fun. Belvedere's in Lawrenceville does seem to be a hub, and part of that is because the manager now is Dusty Hanna, who is the singer for a band called Silence. They haven't performed live in a while. I think they might be on hiatus, but they are a post-punk band, and he is the main organizer of Skullfest, our
Yes.
punk festival that has a death rock night, and he's very good friends with Erica Scary. So yeah, everything, it's like the post-punk people are in charge now, so look out.
Yeah, and they are amazing post-punk people at that. Eric, you mentioned Erica. She's one of the co-founders of Play Alone Records, our local post-punk label. You mentioned Play Alone earlier in the stream, but since we're on the Americas and our local scene here in Pittsburgh, had to give them another shout out. They produce a lot of great local acts in that kind of like dark post-punk umbrella. So a lot of cool things happening in the Pittsburgh scene. There's actually been some really good turnout at some of these events that I've been to, the post-punk ones, and I'm anxious to check out some of the more like goth industrial, like the darker nights. I think I'm going to hit up Cobwebs this week, so I'll probably see some of the folks in the chat on Thursday.
Yeah, that's their old school night. I think nothing before 2000. So if you want some retro, that is the place to be. So the first song you wanted to talk about takes us to New York. That came out this year. It's by 149.
Yes, the song is called Vertigo. They're a death rock band.
But repping the scene that came out of LA originally, but this is a new release, and that's why you chose it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a new release for this year in the Americas. I know New York is kind of like the home of where like the 90s dark wave movement started and death rock started in LA. But this is a death rock band from New York called 149. This is a new release for this year. The track's called Vertigo.
That was 149 from New York. And the next track you chose is out of Seattle, another 2021 release. And why did you pick this one?
Yep, Nox Novacula. Really interesting, sort of goth rock band from Seattle. I really like Nox Novacula. I love the last album that they put out. And the singer reminds me a little bit of Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane. Of course, not a goth band at all, but her vocal style is beautiful, and I love Grace Slick. So to hear that in a goth rock band is really cool. So this is from Nox Novacula's newest album. The track is called Ascension.
Vox Novacula from Seattle with Ascension. Yeah, Kelly, I hear a little bit of Grace Slick. You know, it's interesting that the song was called Ascension because they remind me of a band called This Ascension. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They were on Test Records in the mid
Oh, yeah.
90s. Yeah, they are not as well known today as some of the others that were popular at that time, but their singer Drew has a voice that reminds me a little bit of this one. They also reminds me a little bit of Sunshine Blind, of Caroline Blind.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and Junkyard Bat saying that there's something nostalgic in the guitars. I think it just has that kind of ethereal shoegazer 90s sound.
Yeah, it does sound very like third wave 90s, the guitar work.
Right. So I forgot to mention or to emphasize that I had some bands to play for the Americas that are kind of interspersed with yours. So before we leave the U.S., you mentioned, Kelly, that you feel like New York was like where American dark wave started, and I think that's true to an extent. I feel like the New York scene was very strong, but I think San Francisco was as well. I feel like those were the two hubs. We had the Bank in New York, and but there was this kind of San Francisco sound. And Switchblade Symphony, of course, were at the heart of it. There's another San Francisco band that is almost like I was just listening to it, and I never noticed this before, but they've got some elements of being like a male Switchblade Symphony. They're called Malign, and I heard them on a compilation that came out in 94 or 95 called The Disease of Lady Madeline, and Switchblade Symphony had a demo on that compilation too called Chain, and I think just a lot of people bought that, and a lot of people started to really get into this dark wave sound because of it. And
yeah, and you are right that there definitely was like 90s West Coast dark wave too, because I'm thinking like late 90s there's Diva Destruction out of California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw them play in Indianapolis, and I recently dug up my photos from that, which was 2001, and I posted some online, and there's a crowd shot, and someone tags himself in it, and I realized that it's a 16-year-old Lara from Lorelei Dreaming, who a current
That's
dark wave
wild.
band who they have a new release coming out on August 20th on our local industrial label Distortion Productions. But she was at the same show, you know, as a teenager
That's so
in the
cool.
background of my pictures. So you never know where your paths will meet 20 years later.
Yeah, small scene, small world.
Yes. But I wanted to play Malign. And have you heard this? Are you familiar with this song, Kelly? Skin and Lie?
No, I don't know it.
It's lesser known, but it's like when you heard this in the mid 90s, it just like pulled you to the dance floor. It just had this kind of, it's so atmospheric. I don't know.
All right.
Just listen.
I'm ready for it.
Okay.
Yes.
You can hear those little chimes that are similar to certain songs on Switchblade Symphony, Serpentine Gallery. Yes,
Yeah.
Junkyard Bat, Stabby Synths. That's a good word for it. That track, that copy of that track sounded a little distorted to me. I was trying to compensate for that. I might need to find another version of it. It's hard to find now.
I liked it though. It had really powerful percussion, almost like military marching beats in it.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, yeah. I like it for just the dramatic, over-the-top vocals, and synths that really characterized that very melodramatic mid-90s dark wave and some of
Yeah.
the
I was gonna
mid-90s
say
goth
it's
rock,
very
like London
90s.
After Midnight. Yeah.
Yes, it was very like London After Midnight, like sort of in that realm.
Yeah.
Definitely had that like very 90s sound to it.
I like my pirate shirts and velvet jackets. What can I say?
Nothing wrong with that.
No. All right. I think we are ready to move on from the USA. And can you take us to South America?
Oh yeah, we are headed to South America. First up is, I believe this one's from 2018. It's from the femme darkwave band Diavol's Strain out of Chile. I actually got to see them live in 2019. It was a really cool show. It was at Cadaver here in Pittsburgh. Manny Feiner actually promoted that show. And Jesus Crisis, a Pittsburgh artist, a Pittsburgh duo where the frontman of Jesus Crisis is originally from Chile. They opened up for that show. Really awesome show. But this next track is from Diavol's Strain. It is called Furia.
I remember that show. I think it was on a Wednesday or something, and I didn't have childcare,
was.
but I wanted to go. So let's hear what I missed. Very cool. We now move on from Chile to Brazil.
Yes, so this next track actually came out while I was in college. This was released in 2011. This band is called Plastique Noir. They're a goth band from Brazil. The song is called Blind Voyeurs.
Plastique Noir representing Brazil with Blind Voyeurs. Very French sounding name for being from Brazil. Before we leave that part of the world, I have a band from Mexico, Mexico City to be precise. They're called the Dark Star Calling. And I know about them because they found my Moving Shadows podcast and they started sending me their music every time they have a release. Very nice.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and they have some pretty cool songs. And this is another one where you can really hear their accent in their singing. And I think that's so charming when you can hear, that character. It really lets you know you're listening to a band from another part of the world. So this is The Dark Star Calling with The Blessings That Are Gone.
That are gone.
Very heartfelt. They remind me a little bit of human drama, actually. I don't know if you can hear that at all.
Yeah, that was really cool. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really charming.
Yeah, I really like the acoustic guitar work.
Awesome. So, before we leave the Americas, we have to, of course, stop in Canada. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's an extension of the US, but as we've recently learned, we should be so fortunate, right? So, barely over the border into Vancouver, we have actors. And didn't we meet at an actors concert, Kelly?
I think we did meet at an actor's
Or was
show,
it 45 Grave? It was at Brillo Box,
no,
R.I.P.
It was actors bootlegs, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to miss Brillo Box so much. Funny enough about actors and bootlegs, this year I'm going to see bootlegs, or by the end of this year I will have seen bootlegs live, I think 6 times.
Wow.
And actors will be 5 by the end of this year.
I think it's only twice for me, but yeah, they definitely put on a great show.
They probably think I'm following them at this point. But they're awesome people in the bands too.
Yeah.
Jason from Actors is great. I always end up talking to Barrett, the synth player from Bootlegs. But yeah, Actors, very cool band from Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good show where I met you, and I appreciated that you came up to me and sought me out, and you thanked me for the Facebook group that I run, which is a place where you can find happenings of the Goth persuasion in Pittsburgh. It is a Facebook group called PGH Goth. That is short for Pittsburgh. We're very proud of our H. Don't leave our H off. And so I started that in 2015 when I realized that 3 different people had planned a Goth event on the same night. And it was all slightly different flavors. Like, one was kind of the old school 90s Goth revival that I was part of. 'Cause I moved away for 10 years. And when I came back, some of the original DJs that I had spun with before we did a reunion. And then we had so much fun with that, we started our own club night. So we started a night. Then we also had this post-punk offshoot, like we were talking about with Play Alone Records and Erica Scary. And then I think there was almost more somebody coming from, like, because they came from the punk scene and the death rock scene, and then there were people coming from like the indie rock side of things too. It's like everybody was converging on Goth in the mid 2010s, and so
yeah,
it
very
just
eclectic.
Yeah, but it just turned out like 3 people had planned a club night for the same night that were similar enough that you were almost certain to hear Susie and the Banshees at all 3 of them. And so some of us, including like Jeff Maddox, DJ Cutups, who we were like, wait, how we gotta coordinate better. So I just, I kept my eye out for events because I didn't want to book over anybody else's events. And I thought, as long as I'm keeping my eye out, I should share this with everybody else so everyone's aware that there's a show coming up on this night. So don't book another Goth show on the same night because that just hurts everybody. And I think it's worked out well. It's sometimes hard to keep the right balance because I try to not have too much chit chat on it, but you still want to be able to kind of get to know people a little bit. So it's a tricky balance.
It's a fantastic group. You've done a great job. I do really appreciate it, and that is, originally, like, I recognized you as being the admin from the group, and so I had to thank you for that because it's such a fantastic resource. I know Facebook local, like the event section on Facebook, has gotten a lot more intuitive when it comes to like recommending events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when you started that group, there wasn't really the same level of like resource with the Facebook events that there is now. So that's really helpful.
That's a really good point. I wonder if there are better ways to do it now, because it's just been kind of on autopilot for a while now. But I think Facebook does in some ways make it harder to discover things and in some ways make it easier. Anyway, we should get back to the music. Let's play some actors. So they have a brand new single that came out like 2 days ago called Only Lonely, which is very good. I'm going to play their second newest song though, partly just because I really like the music video. So I wanted to play the clip from that. And it's one of my favorite songs that they've released in the last year or so. This is called Like Suicide.
With a forbidden kiss and a hunger for love, but nothing has changed. Just a little dress.
Actor is from Vancouver. A lot of great goth bands from Canada, of course. One of my favorites comes from Toronto, Rhea's Obsession. Their singer later formed a project called Endara. I booked them in 2018 with Voltaire and Noir and Fires. That was a crazy show. It was the same night as the synagogue bombings here in Pittsburgh, so that was very traumatic but
Yeah.
intense.
There's also Traders, and I think they're from Toronto. They sound very much like a modernized version of The Cure.
Right.
Very great post-punk thing.
Yeah, I like them as well. And Double Eyelid, who were on the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still watching. Ian Ravel, I believe he's also Toronto, but definitely Canadian. Yeah, we get a lot. So I think that covers the Americas. Did we get everything that you wanted to talk about here in this part of the world?
I believe so. Let's spin that globe.
All right. We go now to Australia. I think Australia's somewhere around here on this globe.
All right. So Australia, from what I understand of the Australia scene, over the years, since the punk days in the 70s, it's mirrored a lot of like what was happening in the UK and the US, as far as like punk, goth, post-punk, underground music. And as far as Australia currently, I do have a friend who is a DJ in Australia, and he puts on events. He goes by DJ ATAK, AYTAKK, and he hosts a goth and dark dance night called La Chambra in Adelaide, Australia. So that's kind of my knowledge of Australia. And then, of course, some of the artists that we're going to play here. So this is a new release. They released a new album this year. Really great album. This track is called Who We Aren't.
I like that. Post-punk kind of death rock too, I think. How would you classify them?
Yeah, I would say almost like that second wave goth rock sound. We were talking about kind of like the lead sound. That almost has, or well, it depends on the track for Sounds Like Winter. Overall, I call them a goth rock band, but they do kind of blend some of those different rock-based, like goth and dark genres or subgenres together.
Very cool. You got one other Australian band who are from Melbourne, Locust Revival.
Yep, I believe Locust Revival is a solo artist. This is a recent discovery for me on Bandcamp. And yep, this is from Melbourne, Australia. This is more like a post-punk dark wave, or maybe in the vein of that goth wave subgenre we were talking about earlier. This is from this year, 2021, brand new release, and it is called Modern Desires.
That finishes us up with Australia. It is almost 10 o'clock, so we are going to have to go over because we haven't talked about the Middle East, Asia, or Africa. All of the non-English
Really
and Spanish
interesting
and
ones, yeah.
Scandinavian, Western Europe parts of the world. So we will be going over for a little bit. When we finish up here, I'm going to do a raid on DJ Pat 626's show, which is starting now. It's a great weekly show, and I hope we all watch it when we're done here. But right now, we're going to spin the globe and go to the Middle East. Looks like you've got
Right,
to
so-
tell us about a club in Tel Aviv, Kelly.
Yes. So I don't know of any like large hotspots of goth and post-punk underground culture in the Middle East, but I do know that there is a club, like a goth, dark music, underground music venue in Tel Aviv called Gagarin Club. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I actually found that one on the Where's Your Goth at world map. And I'm not sure if that one survived the pandemic or not. Hopefully it did, because that's pretty cool. And then I do know that she passed away, although they're based in Greece right now. They're originally from Turkey, and I'm sure most of the people watching this or in the chat know she passed away. Really awesome darkwave band.
Yep, I think Israel and Turkey seems to be where it's at in the Middle East for goth and darkwave. I have a song to play from each of those countries. In Tel Aviv, actually, there's a darkwave artist that I've been really digging. Her name is Laya. I've played her song Holding On a number of times on my Moving Shadows podcast. She's got a newer release that I haven't played anything from yet. This is Faded Memory. That was Laya with Faded Memory from Tel Aviv. As Kelly mentioned, She Passed Away are from Turkey, and another band from Turkey who are more on the dark wave industrial side of things are Els and the Cult, and they are from Istanbul. This song is from 2020, and it's called Paranoia. right, it's time to spin the globe again. We're going to go to 3 songs from Asia and then 2 songs from Africa. So, Asia is all you. Kelly, what do you want to tell us?
All right, so I don't know if there's any hotspots or like epicenters for goth, post-punk, dark wave in Asia, but I'm aware of pockets of it in general, dark culture scattered around the continent. There was a Japanese death rock band in the 80s called Fadia, really awesome death rock band. And of course, there's a handful of great modern bands. We'll play some of those in a moment here. When we're playing the first track, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to an episode of Cemetery Confessions on Gothic Lolita, which isn't music related, but it's related to Asia and dark themes in general. But for the set list, the first track we'll play is a new release from this past year. This is from a Japanese dark wave band called Nihon, and the track is called Hazard.
That's representing Japan, Nihon, and next we've got Indonesia.
Yep, this is a really awesome band. I think these artists are teenagers, very young, but very talented group from Indonesia. They do dark electronic music. This is a new release from 2021. The group is called Kamlan, and the song is called Obsession Depression.
Hamlin from Indonesia, and we finish up Asia with South Korea.
Yep. So this is a new release for 2021 as well. So all three of our tracks from Asia are brand new from this year. This is a Korean cold wave band called International Bad Boys Inc. And the track is called Cherry Molding.
Was everything good with that track? It looked like it was mastered really high. Is that how it normally sounds to you?
Yep.
Okay.
It's it has that very like cold wave the lo-fi sound we were talking about before. But yeah, that's the intended sound for that
Okay,
track.
cool. Yeah, it had a fun glitchy sound to it. I just wanted to make sure that was the way that they wanted it to be.
I like that about that track.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, we are going to finish up with two songs from South Africa. The first one is a little bit older, but I feel like it's not as well known as some others. It's by a band called The Awakening, who their singer Ashton Knight has done solo releases since then, and he's in the U.S. now. I think L.A., but they lived in Johannesburg for many years, and this is called The Dark Romantics. I love this song.
And our dreams are where the poets shut. See the world that we hold dear. You mock the way we paint ourselves. You mock our theater tears. We bow in love. I know the angels smile, drinking on emotion and lighting out the fires. We are the dark romantics in our candles glow. We are the dark romantics and our dreams are where the poets go. Oh, we will be a passionless, delicate. Oh, we can see all that God has given is surreal. Surreal. Photograph child holds her head in shame while the crystal wild feels a statue with no name. Oh, we are the dark romantics in our candles glow. We are the dark romantics and our dreams are where the poets go. We will be the passionless, the delicate. Oh, we can see all that God has given is dark romantics in our candles glow. We are the dark romantics and our dreams are where the poets go.
That was The Awakening with Dark Romantics from South Africa. And the last song of the stream is also from South Africa. And this was suggested by DJ Mistress McCutcheon, who used to live in New York and now is in Canada. I think she's in Toronto. But she told us about a band from Cape Town, South Africa. They are called the Medicine Dolls. And they have, as she put it, like a more gothic version of the Cramps sound to them. It's really fun. This is called Covered in Filth. That was the Medicine Dolls. Aren't they fun, Kelly?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I love like mid-century inspired like rock, like modern mid-century type of stuff, like psychobilly, surf punk, and that definitely had some of those vibes. So that's probably where the comment or the comparison to the Cramps came from.
Yeah, I think so. And you've got, I think they might be a couple, but there's a male, female leads, and plus a drummer, so you get that sort of Lux Interior and Ivy vibe going on. This
Yeah,
video for this
definitely.
song is really cool. It's on, they did it for a TV station, and it's up on a rooftop, so you can Google this song
Very
to
cool.
look for it.
I
Well,
love it.
we are wrapping up. Thank you so much for joining us on our Goth Around the World stream. Cadaver
Yeah,
Kelly,
thanks
thank you
everyone.
so much
And
for
thank you, DJ Kelly.
for being my guest. We have DJ Ella Fine in the chat. I first met her when I was doing the Swirly Fest um, raid. You know, a lot of DJs on Twitch will have they'll raid into each other's channels, and sometimes people will organize like a weekend event. There's another one going on this weekend called the Old School Electronic Music event, and so Kelly and I originally were going to do this last weekend, and then we moved it, and I forgot that I scheduled over that. But that's worth checking out. We're going to raid though my pal DJ Pat 626's show, which is currently in progress. So I'm going to take you right to that, so you can join them.
Bye, everyone.
Elliot, she also asked if I have a regularly scheduled stream. I do not. This is, I think, the fourth time that I've done Twitch. I really need stuff like this to motivate me to learn all the different things. But now that I have, I feel like I could maybe just do this randomly here and there, or maybe start something more regularly. But if you would like to see more, make sure you're following this Twitch channel. Cadaver Kelly is primarily a YouTube content creator. Her YouTube channel is Cadaver Kelly on YouTube, and she's something of a goth historian, and she's done a lot of videos of genres and things like her top 10 songs of the 90s, things that if you enjoyed this, you will definitely enjoy. So seek her out, and it was great seeing you all. I'm going to take you to Pat626's channel. Still not super proficient at doing this though, so give me a second. And Kelly, is there any last words?
No, thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for the plug for my YouTube channel, and enjoy Pat's stream, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.